This is how it started. It's not hard to understand. From coast to coast they're lying at a CEO's command. From nationalist public radio, CNN and NBC, Big Brother spewing propaganda from the disinformation ministry. They say the economy is booming, we hear the homeless beggars cry. They say we help poor countries, we see bombs falling from the skies. Reality doesn't exist.
This is New Polemic, a production of the Polemic News Network, PNN.TV. We've been handed a huge defeat this election cycle, and as liberals or progressives or leftists or whatever title you choose to use for yourself, we can handle this in a couple of different ways. We can sit back and nurse our wounds, and we can complain about how corporate America bought this election, and we would be fully within our right to do that. Corporate America spent almost, I think they're calculating at about $4 billion to buy this election. But by doing that, we're not really going to help ourselves too much. We don't accomplish anything if we just sit back and complain. There's a good chance that Citizens United is the decision by the Supreme Court that allows corporations and private entities to spend whatever they want to influence an election. That's not going to be rolled back before 2012. So we have to take another attempt or another approach to dealing with this. And I think that the main thing we need to do is we need to sit back and we need to take the most important lesson that we can learn from the Tea Party. And I can hear you guys laughing already. But really, there is one lesson that I see that we could learn from the Tea Party. And that is we can learn how to work together. Because one thing that they did well is, even though they had all sorts of different ideas, some were against taxation, some were for traditional marriage, but they didn't all agree on the same issues. But they were still able to work together for a common cause. Now, something I have noticed in the progressive circles is we tend to set ourselves up in a circular firing squad. We destroy ourselves. We tear each other down over issues that we consider a litmus test to be a progressive or a liberal. We're the first ones to say, well, the Republicans use the pro-life litmus test. If you're not pro-life, you're not a real Republican. But we do the same thing. If you're not pro-choice, if you're not pro-gay rights, if you don't believe that Don't Ask, Don't Tell should be repealed, if you don't support same-sex union or same-sex marriage rights, then we're going to vote you off the island. You're not really a progressive. You're not really a liberal. And we sit back and we wonder, why is it that people are voting against their best interests? How is it that Republicans can come in, multi-millionaires, billionaire corporations can come in and convince a $30,000 a year employee to vote to support tax cuts for the richest Americans, for the top 2 or 3%? Well, if I'm a working class Joe Schmo, here we go, I'm a working class Christian, and I am. I'm a Christian and I'm a progressive, or liberal, or leftist. I would actually consider myself a leftist, but now how can that be? Well, even though I have certain beliefs based on my religion, that doesn't mean that I can't work with people that have different beliefs. I am married to a Buddhist. Well, how does that work? Well, I'm a pacifist. I hold to a very traditional, very primitive idea of Christianity that says violence in any form is wrong. And guess what? My wife, who's a Buddhist, also believes that violence is wrong. So we're able to find this common ground. And if we don't learn this lesson as progressives, then we are never going to gain much of the working class on our side of the aisle, the fence, whatever you want to call it. But there's a reason that during the 60s, and actually during the late 50s and 60s, so much progress was made toward leveling the income inequality. And that is, those people were able to work together for a common cause. This was really something that really woke me up to this is a discussion that I had on the Huffington Post within the last couple of weeks. And I was extremely discouraged by this because I go out of my way. I try really hard to respect everybody. I don't, even if my religion has certain beliefs and your religion has certain others, or your lack of religion does, that doesn't mean I have to disrespect you, but I'm entitled to the same thing. And I was having a discussion about don't ask, don't tell. And I work with military members on a regular basis. Many of my friends are military members. I'm a veteran. Even though I'm a pacifist, I am also a veteran of 12 years in the Air Force. But I work with these guys every day. And I love some of these guys tremendously. And I would do anything for them. And they understand that I can be opposed to war and still have them as friends. And what a foreign concept. But I was having this discussion. I understand. We talk about don't ask, don't tell on a regular basis. And I understand this is a very emotional issue for many people. But we were talking about the issue. Okay, well, most military members, and I'm just kind of generalizing the results. There was a survey done by the Department of Defense because they understand that don't ask, don't tell has to go away. And one of the things that came up is the biggest issue that people are uncomfortable with is the shower situation. Okay, well, I was listening to a podcast from Rachel Maddow, and immediately she blew this off. Oh, it's ridiculous to think that we'd have separate showers for homosexuals. Well, okay, you're right. That would be ridiculous. But something that I thought of was a situation when I was in the Air Force. I spent a couple of weeks each year at a base called Thule, Greenland. It's up north of the Arctic. But at Thule, in the hotel, the lodging facility on the base, there was only one restroom and shower facility for everybody that stayed in lodging, both male and female. And within these facilities, they had separate stalls with doors on them for both the shower, which had a dressing area in each area. There was a small area to disrobe, shower, and then get dressed before you left an enclosed area. This provided plenty of privacy for everybody. Male and female were showering beside each other because there was a wall between them. It's not a really expensive solution, but it's nevertheless it's a solution that would actually work for everybody. And it's this type of thinking. It's getting past the activism mentality. And there's a time and a place for activism. And I understand that there are homosexual people that want to serve in the military. I respect that. Hey, regardless of my religious beliefs don't have anything to do with you serving in the military. I don't want to push my beliefs on you. That it's not an issue for me. But I do think that rather than allowing this issue to divide working class people that may agree on 98% of everything else, that we can come together, have a reasonable discussion, and find solutions that work for everybody. And if we don't learn how to address things this way, we are going to continue to lose people. This feet in the ground, it has to be my way or the highway, is the same thing that we accuse conservatives of doing, and then we do the same thing with our pet issues. It's time that we learn to work together. You and I, we don't have to, I don't care if we disagree on 80% of the things. that doesn't mean that we can't work together for 20%. You know, whether if you're pro-life or pro-choice, okay, that's a tough issue. It's for everybody. It's a very passionate issue. Okay, well, we know that we're not going to agree on a pro-life and pro-choice issue. But here's a concept. Can we agree that we want to limit unwanted pregnancies? If we can, let's work together for that. What can we do together? I mean, what kind of message would that send to the people? If we can say, okay, well, let's work together. Now, there are those on the fringe. There are those on the far left, and there are those on the far right. And I'm using that just because there's not a better term to use or a better example to use, that are not going. They're going to refuse to cooperate. Well, if you don't agree with this, then you have no business even in a discussion with me. Well, we've lost those people already. You know, I'm not talking to those people. I'm talking to those people that can actually sit down, have a mature discussion without it turning into a bunch of name calling and tearing each other apart. We have to come to the understanding that these social issues are being used as a tool to divide the working class in this country. There are many issues that affect you and I. And even if we don't agree, I don't care if we don't agree on any of the social issues. That doesn't mean we can't work together on the issues we do agree with. You know, one of the most well-known Democrat families in recent history is the Kennedys. Most of the Kennedys were pro-life Democrats. Now, you would look today and you say, well, there's no such thing as a pro-life Democrat. That's like saying there's no such thing as a Christian Democrat. It's silly. But we allow corporations and we allow mainstream media. These issues tend to dominate media. If the income inequality question comes up, all of a sudden, oh, nobody wants to touch that. That's class warfare. We can't do that. Well, my goodness. What do you call it? If over the last 30 years, the gap between the working class and capital, or the ruling class, the top 5%, has just grown exponentially. Isn't that class warfare? But we are going to have to change this. You know, you turn on the TV and you watch these pundits, and there's some of them I really enjoy watching. Rachel Maddow. I enjoy watching a lot of the commentators on MSNBC. But when I do so, I understand that these people, they're making their money off of mega corporations. They're owned. MSNBC, if I'm not mistaken, is owned by General Electric, who builds most of their crap in Mexico. So even though I enjoy listening to them, I understand the reality that they're not necessarily there for my best interest. As a good friend of mine puts it, they're there to sell soap.
Lying to the people is the real crime when it's all owned by corporations and theirs is the only word. We will seize the airwaves, speak freely and be heard. We will seize the airwaves, speak freely